Ukraine's attack on the aggressor country's airfields played the same role in military history as Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, completely rewriting the rules of war, Washington Post columnist Bout wrote. The attack on the U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor marked the rise of aircraft carriers as the dominant force in naval warfare, the author notes. In turn, the Ukrainian drone attack on Russian fighters exposed the vulnerability of air bases around the world. The Ukrainians rewrote the rules of war again on Sunday. The Russian High Command must have been as shocked as the Americans were in 1941, the publication says. At the same time, Bout notes that the attack on Pearl Harbor marked the beginning of a new war, while the attack on the airfield against Russia was simply another attempt by the Ukrainians to protect themselves from an unprovoked war of aggression started by the illegitimate Russian President Vladimir Putin in 2022. The analogy, he argues, makes sense only in that both attacks could mean the obsolescence of once dominant weapon systems, battleships in 1941, manned aircraft today. A swarm of Ukrainian drones, which likely cost tens of thousands of dollars to produce, could have caused $2 billion in damage to Russia's most advanced aircraft, the article notes. The Ukrainians have exposed a vulnerability that should keep every general in the world awake at night. If the Ukrainians can sneak drones so close to major air bases in a police state like Russia, what's to stop the Chinese from doing the same to US air bases? Or the Pakistanis to Indian air bases? Or the North Koreans to South Korean air bases, the author writes. According to him, the military thought it had secured the air bases with electrified fences and guard posts, but now it will have to reckon with the threat from the sky posed by cheap drones. This will require huge investments in counter-drone systems. Operation Spider's Web will not be a decisive blow to the Russian military, Bout notes, but it shows once again that the Ukrainians are proving to be a far more resilient and adaptable fighter than anyone expected before Russia launched its full-scale invasion more than 3 years ago. Lacking the Patriot missiles that shoot down Russian missiles in mid-flight, the Ukrainians have figured out how to disable the planes that launched the missiles right on their airfields, he writes. During the infamous Oval Office argument between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenski in February, the U.S. President told his Ukrainian counterpart, "You don't have any cards." Well, Zelensky was simply playing his trump card, Ukrainian ingenuity. The Ukrainians have consistently shown themselves to be bolder and more capable than their enemies, even as the effectiveness of the Russian military has improved since the early days of the war, the article says. With their actions, the Ukrainians are making it clear that they refuse to accept defeat and that they have the resources to keep fighting, the author concludes.
Two explosions in the early hours of the 30th of May near Desantnaya Bay in Russia's Vladivostok were part of a planned operation by Ukraine's military intelligence agency. Sources say the blasts targeted the 47th Separate Air Assault Battalion of Russia's 155th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade. One explosion reportedly struck a checkpoint, the other hit an area housing personnel and commanders. According to the sources, the explosion struck near Desantnaya Bay. This brigade has been actively involved in combat against Ukraine, including documented deployments in Mariupol, Volodar, and Kursk Oblast. According to the same sources, the attack caused injuries and material damage. Personnel, military equipment, and special assets were hit. The reports quoted unnamed intelligence sources as saying, citing local residents, RBC reported that at least 10 ambulances and an evacuation helicopter arrived at the scene. Damaged military hardware was reportedly removed from the site using Russian military Ural trucks. Russian authorities confirmed 2 explosions but denied any casualties or damage. The Anti-Terrorism Commission of Primorsky Krai attributed the incident to the ignition of gas cylinders. Emergency services cordoned off the area, and traffic between Shamora Bay and the village of Shtitovaya were partially restricted. The threat has been neutralized, officials stated. Local media and telegram channels, including VCHK-OGPU and Vladivostok.ru, reported heavy police and military presence in the area. Roads were blocked, vehicles inspected, and helicopters were seen flying before the blasts. Witnesses described the removal of large tarp-covered objects, possibly military vehicles, under guard. The telegram channel The True Story reported that the location is used for loading and unloading military equipment for naval deployment. According to Radio Svoboda, Desantnaya Bay may also house a training ground for the Pacific Fleet's naval infantry, which has taken part in combat operations against Ukraine. The 155th Marine Brigade has been actively involved in combat operations against Ukraine, including documented participation in the battles in Mariupol, Volodar, and Russia's Kursk Oblast. Desantnaya Bay is a restricted area and a known site for Russian Navy drills. The 155th Marine Brigade has previously conducted amphibious training there and has been involved in key battles in Ukraine, including Mariupol and Volodar. The bay is located near Russia's Pacific coast, not far from the borders with China and North Korea.
Ukrainian air forces have struck hangars where Russian soldiers were gathered in eastern Donetsk region. The relevant video footage has been shared on Telegram channels. A large number of people were killed as Su-27 fighters struck the hangar where Russian soldiers were gathered near the village of Bogatyr with a US-made GBU-62 aerial bomb. Ukrainian aviation has increased its airstrikes on invaders' positions in the occupied territories of Ukraine and in the border regions of Russia. The strikes are usually carried out with Western-made bombs provided to Ukraine as part of military aid. It should be noted that although the Russian army has repeatedly announced the capture of the village of Bogatyr in the past month, the Ukrainian army has denied these claims and stated that fighting for the village is continuing.